Imagine you're walking through the jungles of Cambodia, and your dog starts barking up into a tree. So you look up, and you see a snake. But not just any snake. A snake that is 20 feet long and over 250 pounds. Now imagine that snake in your house. Believe it or not, these snakes are commonly purchased for children as pets. Granted, that happens with parents that are uneducated or typically think they're being sold ball pythons. Now, these snakes' unique patterns and delightful personalities are appealing until they grow to unmanageable sizes, to say the least. The snake I'm referring to is the reticulated python, or Python reticulatus. It is the longest snake in the world, and third heaviest, just behind the green anaconda and Burmese python. But what if these great snakes came in a smaller package? Would they be more ideal for the consumer? What if they were half the size at 10 feet? Or even as small as a ball python? The snake I'm referring to now, or snakes, are the dwarf and superdwarf reticulated pythons, a naturally occurring dwarfism in the wild. Have you ever wondered why these snakes' sizes differentiate so much, being the same snake, right? In this speech, I will be covering the main reasons why these snakes' size differentiate so much. And by the end of it, my audience will understand the main differences between the mainland, dwarf, and superdwarf reticulated pythons. These snakes all originate across southern, southeast, and Asia. As far south as Indonesia, and as far north as China and India. Though I discovered them by stories my family who grew up in Cambodia and Thailand told me. The biggest misconception about these snakes are they're just big because they have big prey in the regions they reside in, right? That's only part of the reason. The size of these snakes aren't reliant on the size prey they eat, but they do need properly sized food to maintain a healthy diet. According to the peer-reviewed article, Phylogeography of Reticulated Pythons, quote, although taxonomic subdivisions have not been extensively applied to the broader species range, morphologically, genetically, differentiated populations have been identified on Slayer and Tana Jampea Island, end quote. Dwarf reticulated pythons were first discovered on the island of Tana Jampea, or Jampea. They were known as the little snakes that just did, because no one really knew how they came to be there. This island was miles off of the mainland of Indonesia, and there was really no prey for them to have there, or even fresh water. These snakes are their own subspecies of their mainland counterparts. They discovered more islands all across that region. And each island's locality was its own subspecies. They had their own genetics, morphs, and color patterns. And they were discovering these all over the place. The superdwarf islands that I have listed here today are Kalatoa, Medu, Kayawati, and Karamba, all housing the superdwarf subspecies. The dwarf islands being Tambalangan, Sulawesi, and Palua. Now, you might be wondering, how large are these snakes if they are the dwarf versions of such huge animals? Well, pure dwarf wild-type localities range from 10 feet to 12 feet in their max length, and the super dwarfs 6 to 8 feet. Now you might be thinking, that is ginormous. Well, I have an example here for you today. This would most likely be one of the smallest of the subspecies you would see. It is a stuffed snake, but it is about 5 feet in length exactly. So if you think about it, this would be because these pythons are sexually dimorphic, meaning their sizes range depending on their gender. This could be pretty equal to the size of a male superdwarf. So you might be thinking, why would this be considered a small snake when we come from Minnesota and we have such tiny snakes here? Well, compared to its mainland counterpart, where the average size in the wild is 13 to 16 feet long, there are also individuals in the mainland type that are as long as U-Haul trucks, being 24 and 26 feet long. Now, you might be thinking, what classifies these dwarfs and superdwarfs as such snakes? Because I'm sure there are smaller snakes in the mainland that are also these sizes. Well, the classifications of a dwarf and superdwarf are simply what locality they are. So, say a Kalatoa, which is a superdwarf island, produced a 12-foot long superdwarf. It would still be a superdwarf, even if it's larger than, say, a Sulawesi, say 10-foot long snake. That would still be a dwarf, and that would still be a superdwarf. Now I hope that you have a better understanding of what makes these mainland dwarf and superdwarf snakes sizes range so much, and I hope that if you ever wondered, you can now confidently say you know the main differences between the mainland dwarf and superdwarf reticulated pythons. Thank you.